I am Maggie Liu. The most ruthless stab in this piece isn't at the end, it is at the beginning. Jiang Shi stands by the river, carrying a bamboo basket in her hand, looking down at the man she had spent 6 years saving in her previous life. This time, she is not saving him. She grips the handle of the knife, presses it in another fraction, avoiding the vitals, and accurately presses it right into his hamstring. This action hides the core algorithm of the entire story. She is not here for revenge. She is here to recover her investment. In her previous life, she used a century-old ginseng to hang on to Shishiyu's life, used an iron certificate of pardon to exchange for his reward as Defender General of the state, and used a 6-year marriage to prop up the facade of Shi Manor only for him to say in the secret room at the end, "Why wasn't it you who died?" In this life, she withdraws all her investments, only to find that Shishiyu is left with nothing. The satisfaction of this piece isn't she stood up, it is she stopped propping him up. Not propping up his leg, not propping up his career, and not propping up his narcissistic narrative of "you are not good enough for me." She saves her energy to prop up herself. Now let's see how Jiang Shi uses the price of a single ginseng to settle a 6-year score. After I saved Shishiyu by the river, he married me as his wife to repay my kindness. After getting married, we treated each other with mutual respect and were the model couple in everyone's eyes. Until the day his cousin Liu was getting married, he lost his composure. "If it wasn't for you relying on the grace of saving my life, how could I have possibly abandoned Yuan to marry you? It is all your fault that I didn't marry my cousin, making her marry someone she doesn't love." After that, he chased after her to hijack the wedding. And in the end, his cousin lost her footing and fell off a cliff. From then on, he tormented me every day and verbally abused me. In the end, he locked me in a secret room beneath the house, never to see the light of day again. I went back to the day I saw him by the river. I walked up to him and stabbed the knife in deeper. When I saw Shishiyu by the river again, he was lying on the rocky beach, half his body submerged in cold water, with a dagger stuck in his thigh. Blood gushed out along the handle, dyeing the shallow river water a murky red. The late spring wind blew across the riverbank, causing the reeds to bend down layer by layer. Smoke curled up from the distant village as if nothing had happened. But I stood on the bank holding my herb-gathering bamboo basket, my fingertips so cold I could barely grip the handle. In my past life, it was also right here. I heard a muffled groan by the river, hurriedly pushed aside the reeds and ran over only to see Shiyu covered in blood. His breath was weak, but he was still pushing through and refusing to pass out. He was cursing at me back then, too, saying I was just a lowly village healer and didn't deserve to touch him. But in my past life, all I cared about was that saving a life is better than building a 7-story pagoda. So how could I take those mean words to heart? I kneeled in the muddy water to stop his bleeding, cut off my skirt hem to bandage him, and chopped up more than half of my family's heirloom century-old ginseng to brew a medicine that kept him alive. Later he woke up, and to repay me for saving his life, he personally brought betrothal gifts to marry me. Everyone said I was so lucky. A simple village healer actually managed to marry the famous young general Shishiyu. After we got married, we treated each other with the utmost respect. He never took concubines, never hung around brothels, and never embarrassed me in front of others. Everyone in the capital envied me, saying that even though General Shi was cold and didn't talk much, he treated his wife with great respect and was a rare good husband. I thought so too. Until the day his cousin, Liu, got married, he got dead drunk, barged into my courtyard with bloodshot eyes, pointed right at my nose and cursed, "If you hadn't held that life-saving favor over my head, how could I have possibly abandoned a Yuan to marry you? It is all your fault. If it weren't for you, I would have married her long ago, and she wouldn't have married someone she doesn't love." That night, he tore away all his decency, and he also tore apart my dream of thinking that my obedient waiting would be enough to win his true heart. Later, he went after her to hijack the wedding, but Liu slipped and fell off a cliff, her fate unknown. From then on, he pinned all his hatred on me. Every inch of brick and tile in the inner quarters of Shi Manor became a cage that trapped me. My mother-in-law tormented me, the servants treated me like dirt, and Shishu verbally abused me every single day. Finally, he locked me up in a secret room beneath the house, where there was no daylight and no wind. only a palm-sized window that occasionally let in a few dusty rays of sunlight. When he got drunk, he would come down and whip me, and when he was sober, he'd have the servants starve me. I suffered through night after night in that secret room, until the cold sank into my bones and my high fever wouldn't break, kneeling on the ground, begging him for some medicine. Shiyu stood on the steps, looking at me coldly. He said, "Jiangxi, why wasn't it you who died?" That was the last thing I heard. When I opened my eyes again, I was back by the river, back to the time when Shiyu hadn't yet become my husband, hadn't yet stepped on my iron certificate to get promoted, and hadn't yet locked me in the secret room. At this moment, he is right in front of me. The knife in his thigh hasn't been pulled out yet, and blood loss has made his face so pale it is almost transparent. But even so, he still has that aloof and noble look, as if he isn't the one in trouble, but rather that the muddy water all over the ground doesn't deserve to touch the hem of his clothes. I slowly walk over. The hem of my skirt sweeps across the bloody water, and a damp chill creeps up my ankles. Shiyu opened his eyes, hostility surging in his indifferent eyes. He saw me reach for that dagger and immediately grabbed my wrist with all his strength. His fingertips were ice cold, yet he gripped so hard it felt like he was going to crush my bones. "Get lost." His voice was hoarse but still arrogant. "You are nothing but a nameless healer of lowly status. Do you think you are worthy of touching this general? It is not your place to treat my Shiyu's injuries. If it were my previous life, I'd probably feel wronged, feel sad, and make excuses for him, figuring he was just hurt too badly and delirious, which was why he spoke without thinking. Then I would comfort him even more carefully, putting up with his insults while trying desperately to save his leg. But in this life, I just looked down at him, looking at this person who ruined my entire life. Looking at that familiar disgust in his eyes, I actually felt surprisingly calm inside. I didn't break free of his grip, but instead went with the momentum and grabbed the hilt of that dagger. Shiyu sensed something was wrong, his pupils shrinking slightly. "What are you doing?" I leaned in slightly, close to his ear. "Didn't General Shi say you didn't need me to save you?" As my words fell, I applied force with my fingertips, pushing the hilt in another fraction. This fraction avoided his vitals, but pressed precisely into the most critical meridian in his leg. Shiyu suddenly screamed in agony, his whole body arching up in pain, veins bulging on his forehead, and his once proud, cold face instantly twisting beyond recognition. Jiangxi, he actually recognized me. Probably the things from the previous life also left behind an afterimage in some unseen way. I pulled my hand back, letting the blood splatter onto my palm. Fresh blood is warm, but I only felt cold. So cold it cleared my mind. "Shiyu, in this life I won't save you." I picked up the bamboo basket that had fallen on the ground, turned around and walked towards the shore. His furious roar came from behind me, suppressed so much that his voice cracked. "You dare leave, Jiangxi. Come back." I didn't look back. In my past life, I saved his life, and in return I got a marriage to repay the favor, got a so-called respectful marriage, and got endless dark torture in a secret room. In this life, his legs, his career, and that precious female cousin he holds so dear to his heart all have nothing to do with me. The only person I am going to save is myself. When I got back to the clinic, it was already dark. This clinic is very small. There is a consultation desk in the front room, and a medicine cabinet and a wooden bed in the back. The windows are a bit old, and they creak whenever the night breeze blows. In my past life, when I married into Shem Manor from here, I even looked back for a long time, feeling like I was finally leaving this shabby little hut to live a more decent life. Only later did I realize that wasn't a decent life. It was a cage. I lit the oil lamp and dragged an old wooden box out from deep under the bed. The outside of the wooden box was wrapped in oilcloth, and the latch was already a bit rusty. I fumbled to open it, and inside quietly lay a gilded iron plaque of amnesty, as well as a bright yellow scroll of an imperial edict. This is what my father left for me. My father, Zhang Huichuan, was also a famous traveling doctor in his youth. 20 years ago, the emperor went on a southern tour in disguise, was attacked by assassins around the Minxi mountain area, and caught a sudden plague. It was my father who risked his life going into the mountains to pick herbs, spending 3 days and 3 nights brewing a cure. He saved the emperor's life, as well as hundreds of infected people in his entourage. Before he left, the emperor bestowed an iron plaque inscribed with cinnabar, stating clearly that if a descendant of the Zhang family brought the plaque to the capital, they could ask the royal family to fulfill one promise: official titles, wealth, mansions, royal favors, as long as it doesn't harm the nation's foundation or break the law. They can all be granted. On his deathbed, my father held my hand and urged me, "Ashi, don't use this item unless it is an absolute last resort. The world mostly looks down on healers, especially women. If there is ever a day you want to walk out of this little clinic and no longer want your medical skills to be trampled underfoot, take it and go to the capital." In my past life, I didn't use it for myself. After I married into the Shi manor, Shi Shiyu missed his military promotion due to a leg injury. Madame Shi sighed every day, saying that the Shi family's ancestral glory absolutely couldn't be ruined by this generation. I felt bad for Shi Shiyu back then, so I took the Iron Scroll of Merit into the palace and begged for him to be given the title of Defender General. He got all the glory, but I went from being that lowly female physician in Madame Shi's eyes to a lowly female physician who was at least a little bit useful. In that past life, I paved the last way out my father left me into a Qingyun ladder for Shiyu to climb to a high position. So stupid. I wrapped the Iron Pardon certificate back up, put it in the bundle I carried close to me, and got the banknotes from the cabinet, a few medical books, the needle pouch my father left behind, and a few changes of clothes all packed up. At night, I stood at the door of the clinic looking at this little house I'd lived in for over 10 years. I felt no reluctance, only the relief of finally being able to breathe. Before dawn, I locked up the clinic and hired a carriage to the capital city. I am going to the capital. I want to use the Iron Certificate of Pardon to exchange for an identity. Not to marry into a high-status family, not to pave the way for any man. I want to let everyone in the world know that Jiang Shi is not a physician girl under anyone's feet, nor a lowly woman who can be beaten, scolded, and imprisoned at will. I want to be Princess Minxie. I want to open a women's medical bureau. I want the dignity that was crushed to pieces in my past life to grow back bit by bit. On the day I entered the capital, it happened to be the capital city's spring market. Carriages and horses flowed endlessly on both sides of the long street. Restaurants and tea houses steamed with heat. Flower-selling girls carried bamboo baskets through the crowd, and noble ladies gathered in front of powder shops picking out rouge. Compared to Minxie Town, the capital city was like an unfurled tapestry, bright, bustling, and also hiding sharp blades. My carriage had just arrived at E Street when a sudden uproar erupted ahead. A startled horse dashed out of the crowd, charging straight toward my side. The driver frantically reined in the horse, and I was jolted off the carriage, my palms scraping against the bluestone slabs, burning with pain. Before I could even get up, a slender, fair hand reached out in front of me. "Miss, are you all right?" The voice was gentle, carrying a hint of urgency. I looked up, and when I saw her face clearly, my entire body stiffened slightly. Li Yan. In my previous life, the cousin Shi Shiyu deeply longed for. Also the woman he claimed I murdered. The one whose life I was supposed to repay with my own. She wore a light blue spring dress. Her features gentle, but deep in her eyes lay a very faint, heavy exhaustion, a look that a girl of her age shouldn't have. Not far away, a wheelchair was parked by the side of the road. Shi Shiyu sat in the wheelchair, a thick blanket covering his legs, his face pale and his lips tinged blue. But even in such a pathetic state, the look in his eyes when he looked at me was still high and mighty, like he was looking at a mud-stained rag. "A Yuan, don't touch such a filthy person." Li Yan's outstretched hand paused for a moment, but she didn't pull it back. Shi Shiyu stared at me coldly. "Jiang Shi, I didn't expect you to be so shameless. That day I didn't allow you to save me, yet you still chased me all the way to the capital city." "What? Trying to use the fact that you saved my life to force me to marry you? Stop your wishful thinking. I am already engaged to a Yuan. A lowly village healer like you isn't even fit to be my concubine." People around gradually stopped to watch the show. If it were my past life, these words would have been enough to make me so ashamed I'd want the ground to swallow me whole. But now, I just supported myself on the ground to stand up, patted the dust off my skirt, and took the handkerchief from Liu Yuan's hands to wipe the blood off my palm. "Shi Shiyu, I am afraid you've overestimated yourself way too much." He furrowed his brows. I looked at his legs, my tone flat. is a cripple in a wheelchair who can't even stand up worth me traveling thousands of miles to chase after for a husband. Are you even worthy? A few gasps sounded from the crowd. Shishiyu's face suddenly flushed red, his chest heaving violently, his fingers gripping the wheelchair armrests in a death grip. Jiangxi, you dare call me a cripple? My leg is just badly injured right now. Mother has already sought out famous doctors all over for me. In a few months at most, I'll be able to stand up as usual and still be my general seer. He said it with such certainty, as if as long as his voice was cold enough, fate would follow his will. But I know better than anyone. He is never going to stand up again. In the previous life, I was able to cure him because I saved him in time, applied acupuncture correctly, and used the century-old ginseng my father left behind to keep his meridians alive. It was a result where timing, medicinal power, and medical skills were all indispensable. In this life, I am not saving him, and I even personally destroyed his most crucial meridian, let alone a few months. He won't ever be able to mount a warhorse again in this lifetime. Li Yuan held Shishiyu's hand and gently comforted him. Brother Yu, you will get better. I believe in you. Only then did Shishiyu's face soften a bit, as if he had regained his pride from her words. I couldn't be bothered to watch anymore, so I grabbed my bundle and left. After walking a few steps, the sound of brisk footsteps came from behind. Li Yuan chased after me and handed me that handkerchief from just now. Miss, your handkerchief. When I took it, my fingertips touched a small, hard object tucked inside the handkerchief. Li Yuan looked at me, a gentle smile still on her lips, and kept her voice very low. Tonight at the third watch, the third house in Lotus Alley. I looked up at her. That bit of gentleness in her eyes hadn't changed, but hidden beneath that gentleness was a hatred I was familiar with. At that moment I understood. She came back too. At the third watch, I went to Lotus Alley. The house was very small, with an inconspicuous old lantern hanging on the door. Qingyan was a little girl I saved by the roadside when I first arrived in the capital. She was quick on her feet and had no family, so she stayed by my side. She held up the lamp and carefully pushed the door open. Li Yan was already inside waiting. She didn't bring a maid and had changed into inconspicuous plain clothes. There were 2 cups of cold tea on the table. Miss Jiang, she stood up and bowed to me. I looked at her. Miss Li. We were silent for a moment. Neither of us tried to beat around the bush. In the end, it was Li Yuan who spoke first. You've been reborn too, right? I nodded. She gently closed her eyes, as if finally confirming something, and let out a long breath. I knew it. The way you looked at Shishiyu today didn't seem like it was your first time meeting him. I sat down and picked up the cold tea, but didn't drink it. What did you want to see me for? Li Yuan pushed a piece of paper in front of me. A name was written on the paper, Lin Yan. I remembered this name. The person Li Yuan was going to marry in the previous life. The second son of the Lin family in the capital. A gentle youth skilled in riding and archery. I heard he and Li Yuan were childhood sweethearts who had long been engaged. But at that wedding, Shishiyu brought troops to snatch the bride. Li Yuan fell off a cliff, and there was no news of Lin Yan after that. Li Yuan gently pressed her fingertip on that name. Her voice was very steady, but her eyes were already red. In our past life, the person I liked was never Shishiyu. I've been engaged to Lin Yan since we were kids, and Shiyu knew it too. He is my cousin. I respected him and felt close to him, but I never thought of him romantically. But at some point, he started treating that closeness as if he owned it. She smiled a little, but her smile was full of coldness. When he married you after you saved him from his injuries, I actually breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I had just been overthinking things before. Later, when I got married, he stormed into the Lin family with his men, killed Lin Yan, and declared in front of a hall full of guests that the person he truly loved all these years had always been me. That is when I realized he wasn't not crazy, he was just hiding his craziness all along. Li Yuan looked up at me. I jumped off a cliff. I'd rather die than go with him. The lights in the room flickered gently. I held my cup, my knuckles tightening bit by bit. So in our previous life, I wasn't the only one ruined by Shishiyu. Li Yuan was too. She took a deep breath and regained her composure. I woke up a little earlier than you did in this life after Shishu returned to the capital injured. Madam Shi forced me to get engaged to him, saying his leg injuries hadn't healed. He had a violent temper, and I was the only one who could soothe him. I didn't refuse. I frowned. Li Yuan saw my confusion and said lightly, because if I refused, he would immediately go cause trouble for Lin Yan. Rather than letting him act crazy in the shadows, it is better to keep him right where I can see him. I can keep him steady, and I can also uncover those hidden agents in Shai Manor. She took a small map out from her sleeve. There is an underground secret room in Shai Manor. In our previous life, did he lock you up in there? My breathing paused slightly. Seeing the look on my face, Li Yuan already knew the answer. When I entered Shai Manor in this life, I accidentally discovered the entrance. That place doesn't look like it was built temporarily. It is more like it has been there for a long time. The Shi family used it to hide weapons, private ledgers, and disobedient people. She paused. Miss Jiang, I want to join forces with you. I want to protect Lin Yan. I want Shishuyu to never be able to steal my betrothed again. I looked at her. What kind of drug do you want? Li Yuan wasn't surprised that I guessed it. Something that slowly drains a person's strength, but won't be immediately detected as poison. Xing Yan's expression changed when she heard this. I didn't agree right away and just asked, you want to kill him? Number Li Yuan's voice was very soft, but very cold. Death is letting him off too easy. I want him to watch with his own eyes as he loses what he cares about most. His legs, his military power, his reputation, and everything he thinks he can control. I stayed silent for a moment, then took a small porcelain bottle from my needle pouch. This isn't poison. It is muscle relaxant powder. A normal person taking a little will just feel drowsy and weak. But his meridians are already injured. If he takes it long term, the meridians in his legs will completely shrivel up. The imperial doctors won't find any poison. They'll just think his injuries got worse. Li Yan took the porcelain bottle, her fingertips trembling slightly. She wasn't afraid. It was the hate she had held back for too long finding an outlet. I stood up. I am going into the palace tomorrow. Li Yan looked at me. The iron certificate. I nodded. She smiled, but her eyes were red. Then I'll wait for you to become a commandery princess. When the time comes, we'll properly settle the score with Shishiyu. The next morning I entered the palace holding the iron certificate. The emperor was nearly 50, with white hair at his temples, but still carried the majesty of one who had long held high authority. He sat in the imperial study with eunuch Shli standing by his side, and on the desk lay the old imperial edict and records my father left behind back then. I knelt in the hall and held the iron certificate up high. Commoner Zhang Shi, daughter of Zhang Huaishuan of Mingxi, begs your majesty for a promise. The emperor looked at me for a long time and sighed. Zhang Huaishuan saved me, and also saved the people of Mingxi. Back then, I promised that the descendants of the Jiang family who entered the capital with the certificate would have their requests granted. What do you want? I raised my head. This commoner asks for 3 things. Eunuch Li's brows twitched slightly. The atmosphere in the hall instantly fell quiet. I continued. First, I beg your majesty to grant me the title of Commandery Princess of Mingxi, not for wealth and glory, but to let the world know that healers shouldn't be looked down upon for their humble origins, and that women practicing medicine can also do so openly and honorably. Second, I beg your majesty to grant a mansion and allow this commoner to open the Mingxi medical clinic, take in women as medical apprentices, provide free treatment to the poor, and compile prescriptions for epidemics. Thirdly, I beg your majesty for 12 guards. I have no father or mother and am all alone in the capital, without protection. Even if I get your gracious decree, I'll inevitably be bullied by the rich and powerful. After I finished speaking, the hall was silent for a long time. Eunuch Li kept his head down, but there was a bit of approval in his eyes. The emperor looked at me and suddenly let out a laugh. You actually don't ask for gold and silver, you don't ask for good land, and you don't ask to marry a good husband. I lowered my eyes. Gold and silver will run out. Good land will be snatched away, and a husband might not be reliable. Status, a medical clinic, and guards are what this humble woman can actually hold in her own hands. The emperor's gaze grew a bit deeper. All right, An imperial edict spread throughout the capital city that very day Mingxi healer Jiang Shi, for the merit of her forefathers in saving the emperor, is granted the title of Princess Mingxi, rewarded with a princess manor, permitted to open the Mingxi medical clinic, and bestowed 12 shadow guards. Coincidentally, the princess manor bestowed by the emperor was right next door to Shi Manor. On the day I moved into the manor, Eunuch Li personally escorted me. The red doors of the princess manor were freshly painted. The stone lions out front were majestic, and a plaque reading Princess Mingxi's manor hung under the eaves. The accompanying palace servants filed in carrying the bestowed gifts, silks and satins, medicinal herbs, gold and silver. Medical books and ancient scrolls were placed into the storehouse box after box. At the entrance of Shi Manor, Shi Shiyu just happened to be pushed out by someone. Seeing Eunuch Li, he immediately put on a polite face. "Eunuch Li, what wind brings you here?" After he finished speaking, his gaze swept over me, immediately showing a mocking look. He probably thought I was just brought here to do some menial chores. Eunuch Li just gave him a light glance, didn't say much, and turned around to personally help me out of the carriage. "Princess, watch your step." The smile on Shi Shiyu's face froze. It was as if he hadn't heard clearly. "Princess." Eunuch Li turned around, his tone neither heavy nor light. "Mind your words, General Shi. This is Princess Mingxi, newly conferred by His Majesty." Shi Shiyu's face changed again and again. Li Yan stood behind him, looking calm, but a quick hint of a smile flashed through her eyes. I didn't look at Shi Shiyu and walked straight into the mansion. From behind came Shi Shiyu's lowered voice, which still couldn't hide his anger. "Yuan, you don't need to worry. She just got an empty title by relying on her father's past favors. Even if she is a princess now, she is still just that village doctor girl. She moved next door, obviously still coming after me." Li Yuan said gently, "Brother Yu is right." Listening to this, I almost wanted to laugh. The most pathetic thing about Shi Shiyu is that he always thinks all women should revolve around him. On my first day in the mansion, I ordered people to turn the main courtyard into a clinic, the east wing into a pharmacy, and the west wing into the living quarters for female medical apprentices. 3 days later, the Mingxi Medical Clinic hung up its signboard. At first, no one dared to come. The nobles in the capital looked down on women practicing medicine, and the common folk were afraid the threshold of the princess's manor was too high, meaning they'd have to spend silver just to enter. So I had someone set up a wooden sign outside the manor gates. On the 1st, 11th, and 21st of every month, Mingxi Medical Clinic holds a free clinic. No consultation fee is taken from the poor. Women's illnesses can be examined by a female doctor. On the first day of the free clinic, there were only 3 or 5 old folks at the door. All so desperately poor they couldn't afford a doctor and just gathered the courage to give it a try. By the second time, there were women carrying babies. By the third time, the line stretched to the intersection of Long Street. Qingyan was rushed off her feet, but her face was full of joy. "Princess, our medical clinic is really up and running." I sat at the consultation desk setting the bone for a little girl with a sprained wrist. This is just the beginning. The medical clinic gradually made a name for itself, but Shishu was also gradually unable to sit still anymore. His legs were getting worse and worse. At first, he could still barely stand for a while with the support of servants. Later, his legs went numb below the knees, throbbing with pain at night and lacking strength during the day. Madame Shi called upon all the famous doctors in the capital, only to get the same answer. The tendons and veins were necrotic and difficult to restore. Shishu didn't believe it. He firmly believed that he just hadn't met a truly brilliant doctor. He also firmly believed that I definitely had a way. He just couldn't swallow his pride to beg. So one night, just as I took Qingyan out to see the Lantern Festival, someone threw a sack over my head at the mouth of the alley. Qingyan cried out in alarm and was quickly tied up as well. The person carrying me was rough, clearly a guard of the Xie Manor. I was stuffed into a carriage, the wheels bumped along for a long time, and finally stopped in a damp, cold place. When the sack was ripped open, I saw the familiar stone walls, the familiar narrow window, and the familiar steps, the underground secret room of the Xie Manor. In my previous life, I was locked up here until I died. In this life, I stand here again, but I am not trembling. Shishiyu sat in a wheelchair, his face gloomy. Jiang Shi fell into my hands after all. I looked at him and said lightly, "Kidnapping a commandery princess is a serious crime," he sneered. "Commandery princess, you really think an empty title can protect you? Don't think I don't know. You must have climbed into Eunuch Li's bed in exchange for this title." Qingyan's eyes turned red from anger. "Insolent, my lady, is the Mingxi commandery princess personally conferred by His Majesty. How dare you slander the commandery princess's reputation?" Sishiyu looked as if he had heard a joke. "A country healer girl is worthy of talking about reputation." He raised his hand, ordering the guards to step forward. "Jiang Shi, I'll give you one last chance. Cure my legs and I can let bygones be bygones. When I recover, I can still be the great general who protects the nation. If you are obedient, I can take you as a bedmaid and let you stay in the Shire Manor to serve me and a yuan." I looked at him. He actually spoke such absurd words so matter-of-factly. "Jishiyu, even now, do you still think I am practically begging to stay by your side? Are you not?" His eyes were full of dark malice. "You didn't save me yet. You chased me to the capital city. You moved right next door to Shi Manor. You opened a clinic and made such a fuss that the whole capital city knows about it. Aren't you just trying to force me to bow my head and beg you?" I chuckled lightly. "You are really pathetic." Sishu's expression changed. I raised my hand, my fingertips brushing over the hidden clasp in my sleeve. The next moment, several dark figures leapt out from the shadows of the stone room. The guards of Shi Manor didn't even have time to draw their swords before they were pinned to the ground. The shadow guards knelt before me in unison. "Your subordinates arrived late to protect you. Please forgive us." "Princess," Zhushiyu's expression changed drastically. "You really brought shadow guards." "I didn't just bring shadow guards. I looked towards the entrance of the secret room. I also invited the capital governor and Eunuch Li." As soon as my voice fell, heavy footsteps came from outside the secret room. Eunuch led the capital governor and a squad of imperial guards down, their torches lighting up the dark secret room as bright as day. Chains were hanging by the wall, torture devices were piled on the ground, and there were a few old chests in the corner that hadn't been moved in time. The capital governor opened them and saw that inside were weapons secretly hoarded by Shi Manor and a few account books of unknown origin. Shishiyu completely panicked. "This is a frame-up. These things aren't mine." Eunuch Li looked at him coldly. "General Shi, the princess, was kidnapped in the night. The shadow guards tracked all the way to the secret room of Shire Manor, and we caught you red-handed. Are you saying they aren't yours?" Sishiyu's lips turned pale. I walked up to him. The chill in this secret room felt like it was drilling through the cracks of my bones. But my heart held no fear from my past life. Only a hatred suppressed for too long finally seeing the light of day. I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. The crisp sound exploded in the secret room. Shishiyu turned his head aside, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth, his eyes full of disbelief. "You dare hit me?" I gave him another backhand slap. Insulting my status, ruining my reputation, kidnapping a princess, and illegally hoarding weapons. Sishiyu, these two slaps are just the interest. When the capital governor took Shishiyu away, he was still roaring. "Jiang Shi, don't get too smug. My Shi family has military merits. I'll make a comeback sooner or later." I stood on the steps of the secret room, watching him get dragged out. In my past life, he stood on the steps and looked down at me. In this life, we switched places, because Shishiyu kidnapped the princess and secretly hoarded weapons. The emperor ordered him to be caned 50 times, stripped him of half his military titles, and confined him to the Shaw Manor to await review by the Ministry of War. The Shaw family ancestors did indeed have merits, so the emperor didn't punish him too severely for now. But the whole capital city knows that General Shaw's legs are ruined, and he has completely lost face. Madam Shi ran to the palace gate to cry and complain, saying I abused my power to bully others and harmed her son. The emperor only asked one question. If he didn't kidnap the princess, how could the princess harm him? Madam Shi was speechless on the spot. The Shi family quieted down for almost half a month. The Mingxi medical clinic, however, got busier and busier. A dowager consort in the palace had suffered from headaches for years. I stopped the pain with 3 needles and then nursed her with medicinal meals for half a month. The dowager consort's condition improved greatly, and she personally rewarded the Mingxi Medical Clinic with a plaque reading "Benevolent Heart Saves the World." After giving birth, the Prime Minister's wife suffered from a deficiency of qi and blood. She sought out all the imperial physicians to no avail, and it was also me who cured her by adjusting her prescriptions. Those noble ladies in the capital who originally looked down on women practicing medicine started to quietly send cards to seek consultations. I didn't refuse. I took the noble silver as usual. Half of the collected consultation fees went to buying medicine, and the other half went to supporting female medical apprentices. Half a year later, Mingxi Medical Clinic already had 20 female medical apprentices. There were widows, orphans, women abandoned by their in-laws, and also smart daughters sent by poor families. At first, they were timid, not even daring to look up when consulting with patients, but later they gradually learned to identify herbs, take pulses, treat wounds, and hold down the fort when women were in labor. Watching them was like watching versions of myself growing out of the mud one by one. And right then, Yu barged into my life again. That day, I was hosting a banquet in the mansion. It wasn't a normal banquet, but a banquet to recruit a live-in husband. I put the word out that Princess Mingxi wanted to choose a live-in husband, regardless of high or low family background, only asking for an upright character and gentle temper who was willing to respect the princess's medical career, not take concubines and not interfere with the clinic. As soon as this news came out, the capital city was in an uproar. Some people cursed me for not obeying women's virtues, saying how could a woman publicly choose a husband. Some were envious, saying the princess has her own fief, medical bureau, and royal favor, plus no parents-in-law to control her. So marrying into her family might not be a bad deal. In the end, there were more people signing up than I had imagined. I set up 3 rounds. The first round evaluated character. I had people secretly investigate whether their families had incidents of bullying servants or coercing women. The second round evaluated talents, playing the zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, bookkeeping, managing the household, making tea or cooking could all be demonstrated. The third round was meeting me in person. By the third round, there were 5 people left. Among them, the most outstanding was the young lord of the Pei family from Jiangnan, Pei Qingti. He was not the eldest legitimate son, so he wouldn't inherit the family business, nor did he covet fame and officialdom. He had a pair of smiling peach blossom eyes and wore a moon-white long gown. Sitting in the hall, he looked like a person formed from the misty rain of Jiangnan. While others showed off their poetry, literature, and martial arts, he brought a food box. When Qingyan opened it, inside were hawthorn cake, lotus seed soup, and a bowl of medicinal stew. Pei Qingzi bowed, his voice gentle and warm. I heard that the princess is tired from running the charity clinic and often misses lunch. The medicinal stew replenishes qi and the hawthorn cake whets the appetite. It is not a talent, just a token of my regard. The expressions of the other candidates in the hall all changed. I took a bite of the hawthorn cake. The sweet and sour taste was just right. Qingyan whispered, "Princess, this one is good." Before I could speak, a burst of noise suddenly came from outside. Yu burst in, being pushed in a wheelchair. He had lost a lot of weight, his cheeks were sunken, and there were dark circles under his eyes. But that self-righteous arrogance was still there, Jiangxi. He glanced around at the men in the hall, his expression ugly. "You are at least a princess now, yet you actually entertain these shady men in the mansion. What kind of behavior is this?" Pei Qingzi unhurriedly put down the teacup. I raised my hand to signal the guards not to make a move right away. Some people just have to take a fall in public before they realize they aren't standing on high ground. Yu looked at me like he was handing out charity. "I'll give you one last chance. With your status as a princess now, you are barely worthy of the Shi family. Don't even think about the position of the main wife. A Yuan is already engaged to me. But if you are willing, I can have my mother give you the title of a concubine." The hall fell dead silent. Qingyan couldn't help but curse Yu. "Are you crazy?" Yu looked at her coldly. "I am talking to the princess. Is it your place as a maid to interrupt?" I laughed. "Yu, did you forget you just got flogged for kidnapping the princess?" His face darkened for a moment, but he quickly put up a strong front. That was just a misunderstanding. His tone carried a sick kind of certainty. His Majesty the Emperor is mindful of the Shai family's military merits and won't really touch me. The Ministry of War is already discussing the matter of conferring the title of Defender General. Our Shai family is full of glory, and once I am titled, these absurd actions of yours today will all become a joke. So he is still waiting for that position of Defender General. I stood up and walked up to him step by step. You think you can still be the Defender General? He frowned. I leaned over, close to his ear, with a voice only the two of us could hear. In the previous life, I was the one who cured your legs. I was the one who used the iron certificate to petition for your title. And I was the one who poured out my heart and soul to lift you from a cripple to a high position. In this life, without me, you can't even stand up. Shiyu's pupils shrank sharply. I straightened up, my voice becoming clear again. Shiyu, you are not some infinitely glorious young general. You are just a cripple sitting in a wheelchair who still can't see reality. His entire body began to tremble. Impossible. Impossible. He violently pounded his leg as if that would bring the feeling back. I'll be fine, I'll definitely be fine. It is you did this to me. Pei Qingxi got up, walked over to my side, his tone still gentle. Young Master Xu, the princess's estate is hosting a banquet to choose a groom. You've got no manners and no betrothal gifts, and barging into the inner quarters is already way out of line. Guards show young Master Xi out. Shiyu glared at him. What the hell are you daring to tell me what to do? Pei Qingxi smiled slightly. For now, I am not a thing. He looked at me. If the princess doesn't mind, perhaps I'll be someone from the princess's estate in the future. I couldn't help but laugh. When Shiyu was pushed out of the estate gates by the guards, he was still swearing loudly, but of the 5 people in the hall, only Pei Qingxi looked as usual. He even sat back down and served me a bowl of lotus seed soup. The princess got angry just now. Have something warm to drink. I looked at him. Aren't you afraid? Afraid of what? Afraid of Shiyu, and afraid of me. Pei Qingxi thought for a moment. Shiyu is nothing to be afraid of. As for the princess, you would save women with no money for treatment, take in homeless girls as medical apprentices, beat unfaithful men in public, and earnestly taste hawthorn cakes. He smiled. Such a person, I feel there is no need to fear. Just like that, I chose Pei Qingxi, not because he was the best looking, although he indeed was the best looking, but because when everyone wanted to be the princess's husband, only he first asked me, after marrying into the family, will the princess still go to the medical clinic every day? I said yes. He then nodded. Then I will learn to manage the accounts and make medicinal diets. So when the princess is busy, at least I can keep things from getting chaotic in the mansion. On the day of the wedding, the dowry sent by the Pei family filled half the street. It wasn't for me. It was the marrying in assets Pei Qingxi brought for himself. Many people in the capital city watched it as a joke, saying that to cling to the princess, the Pei family was even willing to give their son away. After Pei Qingxi heard this, he just lazily said, they might want to give someone away, but they don't have my luck. The wedding wasn't luxurious, but it suited my wishes in every way. There was no high and mighty mother-in-law, no husband's elders waiting for me to serve them, and no one telling me that a woman should take her husband as her heaven. When Pei Qingxi lifted the bridal veil, he first bowed to me. Princess! I raised an eyebrow, still calling me princess. He had a smile in his eyes. Madam, this madam was completely different from the perfunctory way the servants of Xi Manor called me in my previous life, not slighting nor patronizing. After getting married, the days in the mansion were peaceful yet lively. Pei Qingxi indeed knew how to make medicinal meals and do the accounting. He even quickly organized the accounts of the princess's mansion and the medical bureau into perfect order. In the mornings, he would warm my herbal tea for me, play the zither in the flower hall in the afternoons, and at night, when I returned from the medical bureau, there was always a plate of hawthorn cake or a bowl of hot soup waiting under the lamp. He never asked who I met today, nor did he ask why I was interacting so closely with Liyuan, until one day, I came back from Xi Manor with a faint trace of cold fragrance on me. Pei Qingxi took off my cloak for me and asked in a low voice, is the net about to close over at Xi Manor? I looked at him. You know, you aren't someone who interacts with people for no reason, Princess. Miss Li comes in the mansion on the 7th of every month and stays for less than an hour. Every time she leaves, 1 or 2 stewards at Shi Manor always end up being replaced. If I still couldn't guess it, wouldn't I be too stupid? I laughed. Pei Qingxi, didn't you say you were good at neither literature nor martial arts? He blinked. The youngest son of a merchant family always needs to be a bit humble to marry into his wife's household. I was amused by him. In my past life, the so-called mutual respect was just me and Shi Shiyu separated by a layer of politeness that could never be warmed up. When he didn't scold me, it counted as treating me well. When he didn't touch other people, it counted as being devoted. When he gave me a bit of dignity, I was overwhelmingly grateful. In this life, I finally realized that true mutual respect isn't coldly guarding etiquette. It is when he respects your path and is willing to merge his own path with yours. Liu Yan's wedding date was set for the 8th of the 6th month, not with Shi Shu, but with Lin Yan. When this news spread, Shi Manor was furious at first, then fell into a bizarre silence. Madame Xia didn't dare come to the Princess Manor to make a scene, so she could only call Li Yuan over to cry and complain, saying that Shi Shu's legs were now crippled and he couldn't take any more shocks, begging her for the sake of their years of familial affection not to marry Lin Yan. After Li Yan came back, she laughed in front of me for a long time. As she laughed, her tears fell. She said Brother Yu is pitiful. But in our past life, when Lin Yan died right in front of me, why didn't any of them think he was pitiful? I handed her a handkerchief. Xi Shiyu will go snatch the bride. Liu Yan wiped away her tears. I know, she looked up, her gaze clear. So this time we will wait for him to come. On the 8th of the 6th month, the weather was fine. The front of the Lin residence was decorated with lanterns and festoons. The bridal escort procession was playing their instruments, and the commoners along the street all came to watch the fun, wearing a red outfit and riding on a horse. Lin Yan's features were gentle, but he could hardly hide his nervousness. Li Yuan sat in the bridal sedan chair, holding a small ping and ku pendant in her hand. That was what Lin Yan gave her when they were kids, in her past life. She wasn't able to carry it through to the end of that wedding. In this life, she was going to personally take her life back. The bridal sedan had just reached the corner of Long Street when the sound of horse hooves suddenly came from ahead. Shi Yu was here. He was sitting in a custom-made carriage, accompanied by over a dozen Shi Manor private guards, his face scarily gloomy. Stop the sedan, the Lin family guards immediately stepped forward. Lin Yan's face changed, but he didn't back down. Shi Yu. Today is my wedding with a Yuan. What are you doing here? Shi Shiyu stared at him, his eyes full of madness. She is mine. Lin Yan gripped the reins tightly. She was never yours. These words completely provoked Shi Shiyu. He raised his hand and gave the order. The Shi Manor's private guards immediately drew their swords and charged at the wedding procession. The people on the street screamed and scattered. But Shi Shiyu didn't expect that the Lin family guards wouldn't panic, but instead quickly retreated, revealing the Jingzhou Prefecture constables and Princess Manor shadow guards who had been lying in ambush behind them. Shen. No, there is no Shen here. I stepped out from the 2nd floor of the tea house by the street, with Qingyan and Pei Qingxi standing behind me. The governor of Jingzhou stood on the other side, his face livid. Shi Shiyu, you secretly kept guards, snatched a bride on the street, and tried to murder the son of a court official. The witnesses and physical evidence are all here, just surrender. Shi Shiyu suddenly looked up at me. Jiang Shi, I stared down at him. Shi Shiyu, in our last life you crashed the wedding, killed Lin Yan, and drove Liu Yan to her death. Did you really think you could do the exact same thing again in this life? He jolted, finally realizing that I remembered the past life too. Li Yuan stepped out of the bridal sedan chair, her red veil already lifted. Wearing her wedding dress, she walked over to Lin Yan and held his hand. Brother Yu, this is the last time I'll call you that. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough. I never loved you. I respected you when we were kids because you were my cousin. I avoided you later because I saw how possessive you were. You took my distancing myself as playing hard to get, my marriage as a betrayal, and Lin Yan as someone stealing your things. But I am not a thing. I am not anybody's property. And I am not someone you can just snatch back whenever you want. Xi Shiyu's eyes were bloodshot. Yuan, You've been tricked by them. I am the one who truly loves you." Liuan laughed. "Your love would kill my husband, ruin my wedding, and force me to jump off a cliff. I find that kind of love filthy." When Shishiyu was dragged away, he was practically insane. One minute he was cursing at me. The next he was yelling for Liyuan. And then he was saying he was the one who should be the great general protecting the state, and that we all owed him. After that day, Shi Manor completely fell. Jingzhou Prefecture searched the underground secret room of Sha Manor and found a private army roster, old account books, torture instruments, and a few servants who had been secretly locked up by the Shai family. The emperor was furious, stripped the Shai family of their noble title, and took back Shishiyu's military power for letting her servants hurt people and hiding private soldiers. Madame Shi was punished to move out of the capital city to reflect in peace. Because Shishiyu's legs were crippled and his mind was gone, he was spared the death penalty, but he was locked up for life in the backyard of Shire Manor, not allowed to take a single step outside. After the Shire residence was confiscated, the emperor asked me what reward I wanted. I only asked for that house. To be exact, I asked for that secret room. Half a year later, the old residence of Shai Manor was converted into a branch of the Mingxi Medical Clinic. I had people smash open the roof of the originally cold and cramped underground secret room to let the daylight in, and melted down all the chains and torture instruments on the walls, casting them into copper handles for the medicine cabinets. That place, which trapped me to death in my previous life, became the clinic's most spacious medicine storeroom. A wooden sign hung on the door of the medicine storeroom: "Save others, save oneself." The first time we walked in, Qingyan cried uncontrollably. But I didn't cry. I stood under the daylight, smelling the room full of medicinal scent, and felt nothing but the peace of the dust settling in my heart. Pei Xingqi stood by my side and gently held my hand. "It is all in the past." I nodded. "It is in the past." A few days later, Li Yan and Lin Yan came to the clinic to see me. She had already become Madame Lin, and her face finally showed the brightness she was meant to have in this life. Lin Yan treated her really well whenever they walked. He would subconsciously protect her, afraid she'd trip over a threshold or that the wind would blow on her. Li Yan looked at the medicine storehouse and didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she walked over to the wall, raised her hand and touched that newly built white wall. In my past life, I thought jumping off the cliff would be my end. Only in this life did I realize that there could be a future like this. I smiled. We can all still have a future. I only saw Shishiyu's future once. That was after winter began, when the last side courtyard of the old Shi Manor was also about to be rebuilt. People from the Jingzhou Prefecture came to transfer him to a villa outside the city for house arrest. When I passed by, he was being carried onto a carriage. The once cold and arrogant General Shi was now so thin he was completely out of shape, his legs shriveled and his eye sockets deeply sunken. When he saw me, his cloudy eyes suddenly lit up, as if he had just woken up from some ridiculous dream. "Zhang Shi." His voice was very hoarse. "Save me." He struggled to reach out his hand as if trying to grab onto something. "I know I was wrong. Heal my legs. I'll marry you. I'll make you my official wife. I don't want a Yuan anymore. I only want you." Qingyan was so angry she wanted to curse at him, but I stopped her. I walked up to the carriage and looked at him. "Shishiyu, do you still not understand? I never cared about being your wife." His hand froze in mid-air. I continued. "In our past life, I saved you because I was a healer, and also because I was stupid. But you treated my kindness as a shackle, and treated my life-saving grace as a reason to trample all over me. In this life, I've taken back that kindness. From now on, whether you live or die has nothing to do with me." The carriage slowly drove away. Shishiyu leaned against the carriage wall, his eyes dimming bit by bit. He finally realized that not everyone would stand in the same place forever waiting for him to look back. Nor was everyone he had hurt still willing to save him. Later, the Mingxi Medical Bureau grew bigger and bigger. Outside the capital city, Mingxi, Qingzhou, and Linen all had branch bureaus. After the female medical apprentices finished their studies, they took their medical boxes to different places. Some delivered babies for women, some treated epidemics, some opened pharmacies, and some returned to their hometowns to teach more women how to read and identify herbs. Once, during a palace banquet, the emperor praised me in public, saying the Mingxi Medical Bureau had saved many commoners. Madame Shi was also at the banquet. She had long lost her former arrogance. Wearing a half-old dress and sitting at the very back, her expression was indescribably complex when she heard the Emperor call me the Princess of Salvation. In our past life, she called me a lowly female healer, saying that me being able to marry into the Shi family was smoke rising from my ancestral graves. In this life, she didn't even dare to raise her head to look at me. After the banquet, Pei Qingxi and I returned to the estate together. Inside the carriage, he handed me a piece of hawthorn cake. I took a bite, and it was still the familiar sweet and sour taste. "Why do you always bring this?" he smiled. "You ate 2 pieces at your first husband recruiting banquet, so I remembered it." I looked at him. "Pei Qingxi, do you regret marrying into my family?" He looked as if he had heard something incredibly funny. "The Princess Manor has good food and a nice place to live. My wife is beautiful. The clinic's accounts are interesting, and I get to go out with my wife every month for free clinics, seeing so much of the world that I couldn't see before from the shops. Why would I regret a life like this?" I couldn't help but laugh, he added. "But as for you, my wife, you once said you wanted to choose someone gentle, kind, and who would treat you with all his heart. Do I pass now?" I thought for a moment. "Barely." He immediately put on a hurt expression. "Just barely." I stuffed the remaining half-piece of hawthorn cake into his mouth. "Keep up the good work." He smiled with the cake in his mouth, his eyes curving like the spring waters of Jiangnan. At that moment, I suddenly realized that life really could bloom again. Not by enduring, not by waiting, not by wearing myself down into a meek and virtuous shadow, but by walking out step by step, by taking back what rightfully belonged to me, and by rebuilding a house, a clinic, and a home from the ruins. 3 years later, the Mingxi Medical Clinic officially admitted its first batch of female medical officers. I stood in the main hall of the medical bureau, watching those girls in green step forward one by one to collect their medical boxes. They were of different ages and backgrounds. Some used to be peasant girls, some had been cast out by their husbands' families, some ran away from home because they refused to marry, and others just wanted to learn a skill to support themselves. The way they looked at me was like looking at a path someone had forged ahead of them. I handed the medical box to the little girl at the very front. Her eyes were red, and she choked out, "Princess, can I be like you in the future?" I looked at her. "You can, as long as you don't put your own life in someone else's hands." She nodded vigorously. The midday sunlight spilled down from the eaves, shining on the blue stone floor of the medical bureau, and also on the wooden plaque at the door of the pharmacy that read, "Heal others, heal yourself." Li Yuan came to see me with her child in her arms. Her child could already walk, stumbling into my arms and calling me auntie in a sweet baby voice. Lin Yan stood behind her, smiling as he held her cloak. Pei Qingxi brought out a plate of freshly made hawthorn cakes from the kitchen, and the children immediately swarmed over. The courtyard was filled with the sound of their laughter and playing. Li Yuan watched all this and suddenly said softly, "Jiangxi, we all lived too bitterly in our past life." I nodded. "So in this life, it should be a little sweeter." She smiled, tears in her eyes, but no longer sad. "What happened to Shi Shiyu afterwards?" I thought for a moment. I heard he is still alive. In the estate outside the city, Shi Shiyu sits by the window every day, looking at his legs that can no longer move. Sometimes he is lucid, sometimes he is mad. When lucid, he calls out for Li Yuan, and when mad, he calls my name. But no matter who he calls, no one will ever go to save him again. That is his ending. It wasn't every stroke I personally wrote down, but rather the path he walked himself, step by step. Li Yuan remained silent for a moment, then said lightly, "It is good that he is alive. Alive to see us free, alive to hear the fame of the Mingxi Medical Clinic spread all over the capital city, alive to know that the female doctor he once despised has become the protector of women learning medicine all over the world, alive to understand that he can never lock anyone in a secret room again." I gently took Li Yan's hand and sat together with her in the pavilion. In the distance, children run around the flowering trees. Pei Qingxi is pestered by several children to tell stories. Lin Yan pours tea for Li Yan. Qing Yan takes inventory of medicinal herbs under the corridor, and the female medical apprentices in the clinic are softly reciting prescriptions. The wind blows through the courtyard, bringing a faint scent of medicine and flowers. Looking at all this before me, I suddenly remember the last gleam of cold light in that secret room from my past life. At that time, I thought my life would end in the darkness. But it turns out that wasn't the case. I could still turn around and walk away from the riverbank. I could still bring my father's iron certificate of amnesty into the capital city. I could still become Princess Mingxi. I could still turn the secret room that imprisoned me into a medicine storehouse to save people. I also got to meet Liuan, meet Pei Qingzi, and meet many women who reached out their hands from desperate situations. The so-called mutual respect in my last life was nothing but cold violence dressed up as decency. In this life, I finally truly understand what mutual respect means. It is me not having to bow my head and him not looking down on me. It is me practicing medicine and him holding the lamp. It is me saving people and him brewing the medicine. It is me standing in front of everyone, with him standing by my side. It is me no longer relying on anyone, yet still being treated gently. I picked up the teacup and took a gentle sip. The tea was warm and fragrant, and the sunlight was just right. In this life, I didn't save Yu. I saved myself, and I also saved the daylight that should have belonged to us. The phrase with the most structural value in this story is treating each other like guests. In their previous life, Shu and Jiangxi also treated each other like guests who didn't take concubines, didn't beat or scold her, and didn't embarrass her in front of outsiders. Everyone in the capital city said they were a model couple, but before Jiangxi died in the secret room, she figured one thing out: the only difference between cold violence and treating each other like guests is just the word like. True respect isn't about not touching you, not scolding you, or not embarrassing you. It is about treating you like a human being. After marrying into her family, Pei Qingzi warmed her medicinal tea every morning and never asked why she associated with Li Yuan, only saying one thing before closing the net. If I still couldn't guess it, wouldn't I be too stupid? Two kinds of mutual respect. One relies on distance to keep up appearances. The other dissolves distance into trust. In the end, that secret room became a medicine storeroom, with healing others, healing oneself hung on the door. Jiangxi didn't destroy it. She only did one thing: smashed open the roof to let the daylight in. The walls of the secret room didn't change, the location didn't change, and the size didn't change. But in the previous life it was a cage, and in this life it is a medicine storeroom. What changed wasn't the space but who stood inside it. See you in the next part.